Hello, folks. My name is Leah, and I'm a psychologist specializing in relationships. And I'm here today with Mark Emery, with whom we are going to discuss some not so recent news about Ellen from the Ellen, and I'm going to mispronounce this name, DeGeneres show. But aside with my poor pronunciation of this poor woman's name, Mark, would you introduce yourself?
Hi there, I'm Mark. I'm Mark Emery. I'm an employment lawyer and employment judge, and so I advise businesses and people. And the issue in the Ellen show is fascinating and really well worth having a chat about. Very happy to do so.
Yes. So for those that have no idea what's been going on, the Ellen show has received a huge amount of attention in the media in the past year because many employees have come forward, current and past, to report poor experiences, or rather even abusive experiences in the show by producers, by Ellen herself. Stars that have been guests on the show have also spoken up about ill treatment or demeaning kind of comments during the show in public. And I think it's worth paying attention, as Mark said, because it's fascinating what companies get away with, and with the struggle, you know, of a company to both present, as Mark pointed out earlier, we talked about how Ellen presents as this very generous, positive, caring person on screen, but off screen there seems to be a darker side to her in the show, and how that has been shattered. That reputation, that image, that brand has been shattered. What are your thoughts, Mark? What would you say? It's a very juicy story there.
Well, I mean, the bottom line, as you say, is that when you build a brand as an individual or as a company, which is based upon kindness and decency and empathy towards your fellow human beings, but behind the scenes, your company and you personally appear to be anything but, well, certainly that's what the allegations say, it's simply going to destroy the brand. Whatever sphere you're in, be it cornflakes or be it in TV shows, it is not going to do your career any good whatsoever. And in this case, the ratings have gone down sharply. The apology got top ratings. Her ratings have plummeted ever since. Maybe it's a kind of Dominic Cummings kind of press conference moment. We shall see. But fundamentally, the issues that arise and the allegations that have been made are serious. Apart from the toxic culture, my view, culture always comes from the top. If you don't have a positive culture at the top, you're not going to have a positive culture anywhere else in the organization. You know, CEOs and the senior leadership of any company should be breathing positive culture in, whether it goes to working hours, as we talked about in the past, or whether it goes to issues such as harassment and abuse. The allegations seem to have risen in light of the kind of real social movements that started in the US of Black Lives Matter and Me Too. It has, I think, empowered employees in different industries to speak about their experiences. Sometimes it's been ex-employees talking out, which has led to both ex and current employees contributing to that debate. And there have been allegations of racism, which has forced people out, description of kind of microaggressions towards a Black member of staff, allegations of sexual harassment against individuals by senior management. Names have been named of those individuals. Incredibly serious allegations, both in relation to the individuals who make them, to the company, to the insurers who are probably looking at the kind of amount they're going to have to be paying out to some of these individuals, potentially at the end of the day after legal claims have been made, potentially.
Mm. It is, it's not unheard when people come out in dozens.
Yes.
But what BuzzFeed has published is the accounts from 36 unnamed former employees alleging
Yes.
incidents of harassment, sexual misconduct, and assault from top producers. And I'm thinking, if that is in court and you have 36 plus people saying the same thing,
Yeah.
Not hiding behind anything because they have nothing to lose anymore.
Yeah.
That would, I personally, I'm not a lawyer, maybe you would say, but I personally would not see a judge that would be in their sense, that would be like, yeah, 36 people are lying. There's nothing happening here.
you just can't say. And the kind of way, particularly the American system works, means that there will be cases that will be brought. Maybe cases will settle. You just don't know. But in the UK, if this sort of issue was raised, and there was a group of employees, all of whom were alleging similar fact, former or current employees, all who are alleging similar fact behaviour against individuals within an organisation, a court or tribunal. I work in the employment tribunals. That kind of evidence will be taken incredibly seriously. Now, whether those claims would win or lose at the end of the day would always depend upon the particular facts of the case and on the kind of claims they brought. You can have claimants having facts found in their favour, but still losing on technical grounds the legal claim they may have brought. So the legal claim is always a hell of a battle. It never does anybody any good. You would hope that where this behaviour is now recognised within an organisation, I think the one thing Ellen has done is come out and apologise, albeit there seems to have been quite a lot of delays, 2.5 weeks I saw between one set of allegations on the 30th of July and then the response on the 17th of August, I think last year, from Ellen. You wonder about the length of time for that response to be made, but you would hope that those responses are genuine, that there are going to be root and branch attempts to sort this out, that people's blind spots are recognised, that appropriate disciplinary action is taken, and potentially criminal action if necessary against individuals who are alleged to have committed serious wrongdoings, sexual assault, for example, being just one example. The fact is that this company, it appears on the allegations, has allowed this kind of culture to develop. And as I said at the outset, this absolutely goes to the culture of business and the culture of the senior leadership team, within business.
I think that we have a huge problem with people not understanding power in the work environment and even in relationships. Something that may seem closely related, not so much, is I recently had a chat with someone who basically moaned about being fired from 2 jobs because he had relationships with colleagues. And he was still, and this is someone that is, I'm guessing, around 30 years old, he still seemed perplexed by the fact that this has happened, that he got fired for having what he considers consensual adult relationships with colleagues. His comment was, yeah, I understand if it was between senior and subordinate, but what, between colleagues? And I was like, yes, there are power dynamics that happen that are just not healthy in a work environment. And if the company is not prepared to deal with them, then both employees can end up in very sticky situations. And I know that some of the people that throughout the Me Too movement have been accused of sexual harassment, assault, etc., would say, well, we were colleagues, there was flirt, there was this and that, and they'll try to justify it somehow. They just do not understand how power works. And this is, I think, the scary thing. It's not so scary when you know that someone is purposefully abusing power.
Yes.
In my opinion, it's scary when you're dealing with the bliss of ignorance, and when you have employees that are uneducated. That in itself can lead to these situations where a company's reputation is just slammed to the ground because they haven't made sure that their employees are really aware of what it is like to have a relationship between colleagues, what to do with it, how to report it to HR, what the consequences will be, how they'll be safeguarded, etc., etc. And this is huge, you know.
I think the example you're talking about, the employee, you don't know. Maybe he was dreadfully treated. Maybe there were issues there with the way he was interacting with the individuals concerned. You just don't know. We can't comment. Generally, relationships at work. I don't think employers can have bans on relationships at work. I think people meet at work. You get the most beautiful relationships arising out of the workplace. Employers have got to be incredibly careful that there is no element of an abusive relationship occurring, or any issues from private life kind of spilling over to work in either professional conduct at work or how people are seen interacting at work. So there have got to be rules. I would suggest the businesses do have a policy about relationships at work, making it clear what the guidance should be, particularly where there is a power imbalance. I have seen organisations where the possibilities for allegations of kind of abusive conduct because of hierarchical relationships, sometimes very casual, sometimes deliberately so on behalf of by the senior person concerned. I'm sure people were hurt along the way. That is now squarely an issue, as you say, of kind of power dynamics, potentially an issue of abuse, potentially an issue of misconduct. Employers got to be very careful that they ensure that, you know, if there are relationships at work, that there is a, you know, that employees are aware of the policy, and in particular, if there is a seniority issue, that is dealt with appropriately, and to ensure that there's no suggestion of abuse whatsoever. Having said that, a lawyer in a very large firm has just effectively been cleared on appeal because he had some kind of relationship with a junior member of staff when I think both were drunk and went back to her place, etc. He just got cleared on appeal on the basis that there was no suggestion of a kind of power or abusive relationship, and secondly, it was their private lives. So it's tricky. It's very legally, it's tricky. Morally, it's tricky. Ethically, it's tricky. Getting it right within the organisation is tricky, but it's something that good employers should be considering.
I'm thinking even about, like, I don't know the case, I don't know the situation with the people that you just mentioned, but there's always that kind of power that even the courts, and I say this with due respect, but I've seen cases where lawyers have said such insane things, as well as judges, that I'm like, how are these people ruling other people's lives and making decisions based on such ill-informed or misguided or even lack of understanding of power and power abuse. And there was a case, I did a comment video on a case that came out a couple of years ago, I think, in Oxford, where a lawyer, the case was a rape allegation case. It was two young people after a party, drunk. They go to her place, kind of similar situation, right? Almost, except for the power dynamic. But the lawyer said something along the lines that he couldn't have raped her because she seemed to be enjoying it, or she moaned or something like this. And I'm like, what? And that it was consensual. And he said something along the lines that he couldn't have raped her because he taught consent to young children. And I'm like, consent is between two sober people, you know? You can't have consent like not sober. That's the ABCs.
The issue we've just been reading about over the past few days of sexual assault, sexual abuse at school, young people, young boys, it appears, young men, it appears, at school in particular, issues of pornography, issues of consent, all coming up. But and it's a very serious issue, and the issue you raised there is really serious. But before I say but, I'm going to say something else, which is that the fact that, you know, the prosecution rate, let alone the conviction rate, is tiny compared to the allegations made, and the fact that currently it still appears that women and other people who've reported abuse, obviously it's not just women, are having their private lives examined and their phones examined, etc., implies that the account is not going to be believed unless you are a particular paradigm of individual, which equates women as ladylike, who will not get drunk, will not swear, will not flirt. I don't know what, you know, of course, you know, in other words, it's a deeply, what I'm trying to say is, very badly, it's a very deeply sexist way of looking at women and the people who have suffered from abuse, in a deeply offensive way of doing it. But, and here's the big but, it's that lawyer is acting on instructions. He is not necessarily, he or she are not necessarily believing a word of what they're saying, but they're being paid to act as though they believe what they're saying. That is the absolute nature of being a lawyer, which is why you've got to be really careful about divorcing the lawyer from the case. In the main, yes, lawyers, you know, can, you know, there is this thing called the cab rank rule, which says, as a barrister in particular, if a case comes along and you're offered it, you've got to take it, even if you wouldn't touch that individual or those circumstances in normal life, particularly as a criminal lawyer or as a civil barrister. If you are told, if somebody comes along and says, I want you as the barrister, or your clerk says you're next in line for this particular case, you take it. So that barrister in Oxford Crown Court would have been absolutely acting in that way, because his client would have said, yes, she moaned and she looked as though she was enjoying it. Horrible. And the judge and the jury have got to take that into account, you know, and they've got to decide who to believe. Often these cases are about, who do I believe? And often that barrister, at the end of the day, he or she will be saying, phew, glad I didn't win that one when they got sent down. You know, because I kind of knew that they did it. But unless you're told they did it, unless that person comes to you and says, I did it, but I want you to get me off, if the barrister's told that, they have to walk off the case. They can't act. They have to go to the judge and say, I'm sorry, an issue has arisen, I'm no longer instructed. And then the judge will go, okay, we'll wait till a new barrister is appointed. And that's that. Then the new barrister comes along, and as long as the client tells them, I'm innocent, Gov, didn't do it, then the barrister has to go along with that, or the lawyer. That's the nature of the game. That's what being a lawyer is.
Okay, but still, I would think that you have to be better informed to argue such a case in how power dynamics work. It's like
That's for the defense.
It's like in 21st century.
That's for the defense. That's for the that's not for the defense. That's for the prosecution. Sorry, to be turning around and telling the jury, because this is a jury trial as well. Don't forget, and trying to convince the jury that what is being mentioned there is rubbish. That was an attempt to get away, not a moan. Look at what she reported to the police. She's been consistent all along. He would say that, wouldn't he? You know, that's the job of the prosecution, to punch holes in that defence. But don't forget, in a criminal trial as well, it's beyond reasonable doubt. They've got to be convinced that there was that there was a lack of consent in that case, and he either knew that or didn't care.
That makes so much sense as to why so few people actually are convicted for such crimes.
Going through the legal system is either in the kind of civil employment sphere that I do, or in the criminal justice system it's a horrible experience. You know, for the victim, for the, you know, if there's an innocent party who's being accused, you know, not necessarily in this kind of case or this kind of incident, but you know, it could be any kind of crime. It's horrible, you know, and you know, people have been subjected to crime and have made complaints and are going to court. I think, you know, in the vast majority of cases, they will say that there have been incredible individuals along the way, your police officers, lawyers, you know, etc., along the way have really helped, but that the experience has been overall absolutely hideous.
You know what? I would circle us back to the Ellen show and the fact that so many people are impacted by such behaviors at the workplace and outside of the workplace.
Yes.
When you have organizations, when you have systems that work so badly, so organizations or a company like the Ellen show that enables abuse, then you have a legal system that is not victim friendly, let's just put it that way, that has a difficult process. You end up with a very damaged society. You end up with hundreds of people being massively impacted, even when let's say I worked at Ellen's, and let's say that I am just not the type that you target for sexual harassment. I fall into the cute, not in the sexy. So my friend is though sexy and she gets all the harassment, etc. I would be impacted as a, you know, person that just sees it all and happens to be in proximity. I might be silenced by my friend who says this job is too important, I can't lose it, I'm just going to endure it. That damages me and my psyche. Let's say that someone else speaks out and I see what happens to them. They go through the court system that just trashes them and breaks their life apart, even for whatever reasons. That creates hundreds, thousands of people that have witnessed abuse, that have been in close proximity, that read about it on the news or whatever else, that end up very harmed and very damaged. And they also have jobs, they also have lives to be part of and to be navigating. And we end up with like societies, full societies that are impacted. And then companies want more of us, you know?
It's when it goes wrong, and when you say, first of all, I think in a lot of these cases, what you're going to find is that an awful lot of employees are going to get payoffs. They're going to have hired lawyers, and in America in particular, that there appear to be pretty good payoffs. I know that's not a good answer, but in other words, the idea of, particularly in the civil system in the UK and the US, you know, having to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to grind through the system. No, you know, in the UK, I'm sure it would be the same, that settlement would be made in these kind of cases where there is this overwhelming kind of evidence in favour of the employees. Secondly, you can win in court, and you will win in court if you've got a good case, or the chances are you will win in court if you've got a good case. Yeah, it's a hell of a process to go through. You wouldn't wish it on anybody, but, you know, I've achieved vindication on behalf of clients, you know, kind of against the odds, against big companies, you know. That is one of the most thrilling things that can happen as a lawyer, you know, the phone calls to the clients, and usually the meet in the pub shortly afterwards, because often there's you know, very big wins. We're talking, you know, we may have won at liability, but we know the next hearing is going to be, we're into the six figures, you know, how far up the six figures are we going to go? From are we going to win or lose? It's suddenly we've won, how much are we going to get? And that's just an incredible feeling. But in those kind of cases, the losers, you know, the employer, the managers, the HR team, the individuals affected, the time, the cost, the lawyers, the finger pointing afterwards, that can hurt an awful lot of people in the organisation, and you just have to hope that lessons are learned and that the organisation will turn around and say, okay, we have done these things wrong. Unfortunately, what you also find is, that's this maverick judge, wasn't it? That was a horrible tribunal. We lost that one. Should we appeal? You get that as well. People who aren't seeing or aren't prepared to see that they've got wrong, and that goes against the company culture. How do you change company culture?
And I think all the money in the world cannot erase trauma, you know, especially for like sexual harassment victims. It doesn't matter even if they give you like £1 billion. For some people, this is, you know, something that they can never recover from. And
I'm thinking now of a couple of clients who, one of whom I won quite a bit of money for in a race discrimination claim, and the other one who in the main lost his race discrimination claim and went to appeal and got a little bit on appeal, but, you know, you've got to say it's a very Pyrrhic victory. But both of them, 10 years later, I was in contact with for different reasons, and both of them said, we haven't really got over this and the effect it's had on us and our careers, and you know, they've moved on, they've done their best. But yeah, you know, any kind of discrimination is, you get people who do fight back and do get lucky and do kind of bounce back career-wise, but psychologically, yeah. But a lot of people, it kind of really does badly affect their careers, and either psychologically they can't move on, or they haven't had the luck to move on, or the fact that they've sued is counting against them. They've had too long out of their careers. It's taken too long to get back on track, and yeah, it can you know, have a, you know, lifetime implications.
Super unfair, but I guess we need to just continue fighting it with what we've got.
I'm on the cold face. I kind of do the cases, you know, when they get to law, it's going to take other people to, and all I can do is advise companies on kind of good culture. But that means the people want that advice, and you're getting too many companies who, what? Well-being?
Yeah.
What?
What is that? Let me check it in the dictionary. Why is this such a buzzword? Oh, an employee killed themselves. Oops. Oh, it's on them. Yeah. You know, that's yeah. I could take this into a new article that came out about Japan's women that are experiencing karoshi, which is work to death for the company. Yeah. But that's a whole other topic, and I'm thinking we've covered so much. We went from like the Ellen Show to sexual harassment, the power dynamics, the legal side of things.
I did tell you we would veer around. I do tend to veer when I'm chatting.
No, it's great. We've covered so much, and I hope that people that are seeing this, they start thinking, what are we doing to society by having these structures and dynamics in companies, in court systems, and how we can improve things. Because if it's not that we're working towards improvement of systems and companies and cultures, then what are we doing even, what are we chasing? So thank you once more for an incredible chat. I had great fun, despite the difficult topics, and I hope we'll do something like that again.
Very good indeed. Love to. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Bye.